Hi, welcome to Head Start, the podcast for race directors and the business of putting on races. 90%. Keep that number in mind. That's how much of your event waste you should be diverting away from landfill to be able to claim that your event is a zero waste event. Sounds tough? Easy? Well, for most races, that's a pretty high bar to clear, particularly as when you start adding everything up, it quickly becomes apparent that a race can generate waste in many more ways than may seem obvious at first. To see how a race might get to that zero waste goal, I'm joined today by P3R's Director of Operations, Brian Smith. Brian and the P3R team have really been at the sharp end of event sustainability, having achieved a zero waste status for the very popular Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon since before event sustainability was even a term. With Brian's help, we're going to be looking at a race's more obvious and less obvious sources of waste segmentation, recycling, composting, and reusing waste materials, as well as the importance of joining forces with local agencies and businesses that share your sustainability goal. And since making sustainability sustainable in the long term has to come with a dose of financial pragmatism and a careful balancing act between respecting the environment and delivering a fun race experience, we'll also look at things like sustainability sponsors and other ways to take some of the burden of achieving zero waste off your shoulders. Before we go into all that very interesting stuff though, a quick shout out to the amazing sponsors supporting this podcast. Many thanks to Run Sign Up, Race Director's favorite all-in-one technology solution for endurance and fundraising events, now powering more than 26,000 in-person, virtual and hybrid events. And many thanks to RaceCheck, whose free RaceCheck review box widget can help you collect and showcase your participant feedback on your own website, helping you more easily convert website visitors into paying participants. And we'll be hearing a bit more from these two great companies a little later in the podcast. But now, let's dive straight into waste and our waste reduction discussion with P3R's Brian Smith. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Panos, thank you for having me. Looking forward to getting the opportunity to talk with you today.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you for your patience. I should say people would know this with all the gremlins we've been having. It's like the fourth time we're coming together to record this. So thank you very much for sticking with us through this. You're the Director of Operations for P3R.
Correct.
You're based in Pittsburgh. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Is the entire team from P3R based out of Pittsburgh?
Yes. The entire team is here in Pittsburgh. We are all in one office down on the North Shore along the river here in Pittsburgh, downtown.
And which river is that? Because, I'm not a Pittsburgh native, and I see in your company name there's three rivers there, Pittsburgh Three Rivers. So, which river are you guys adjacent to?
So, we are adjacent to the Allegheny River, but we are just up a couple 100 feet from where all three rivers actually come together, the confluence of the Ohio and of the Monongahela.
Awesome. Must be some very nice fishing around there, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. Some people might not want to fish out of the rivers, but it's beautiful, though.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the company, about P3R, a little bit about what your role is within the company in operations and the kinds of races you guys put on? I'm sure a few people would recognize at least a couple of them.
Sure. So P3R, as we mentioned, Pittsburgh Three Rivers Marathon. It's right there in our title, the Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon is our marquee event, first Sunday in May every year. P3R has been around for 16 years now. The marathon here in the city of Pittsburgh went away for a few years. Then Patrice Matamoros, our former CEO, brought the marathon back and started up P3R. So as I mentioned, the marathon's our marquee event, but we have a portfolio of over 11 other events, some that we own as an organization, but some that we work with others within the Pittsburgh area to put on their events. Some of our events, the Fleet Feet Liberty Mile, the City of Pittsburgh Great Race, which is a 5K, 10K, one of a little different from a road race that we do, but the Greater Allegheny Passage, which is a trail that runs from Pittsburgh to Cumberland, Maryland, actually all the way down to Washington, D.C. We do a relay along the trail, 150 miles. We have our EQT 10 miler in the fall. And then we help, like I said, other organizations like the YMCA of Pittsburgh to put on their turkey trot on Thanksgiving, the Steelers and the Penguins to put on their races, Children's Hospital for a walk, and then the Pittsburgh International Airport to put on a flyby 5K right on the runway of Pittsburgh International Airport. So very busy year for us here at P3R, but my role, as you mentioned, Panos, I'm the director of operations. I have a team of 5 that work under me. My role specifically is I work with the city, work with the officials, Department of Public Works, permitting office, really close with City Pittsburgh Police to get police and all that for our events. And then just oversee the team that I have from course designs to mapping out to working with vendors to be ready for race day.
It never ceases to amaze me how even very high profile large races like the Pittsburgh Marathon and other events you guys put on, how lean of a team end up running them. I mean, like yourself and other 5 people in operations wouldn't sound like the kind of team you need to run those kinds of events, right?
No, we as a P3R as a whole, we have 30 full-time staff members. And in my 9 years of being with the organization, this is the largest that we have been. Specifically the marathon with the distance and how much of the city we cover. But the fall for us is very busy with a lot of events back-to-back weekends. A lot of people think that we would have a lot more individuals working on these events. We are great at time management and multitasking. And one thing we get a lot too is people asking, "Oh, is this a full-time job? You know, the marathon's only in May. What do you do the rest of the year?" Without them knowing that we have other events that I just mentioned previously. So it's a full-time job, 30 of us on the P3R staff, and we keep busy, but I love it and so happy to be working for such a great organization.
Absolutely. Just spending a second on this, how has the past couple of years been for you guys?
I think everyone knows the answer is it's been tough. It's been difficult. It's been different. So like I said, marathon is May, first Sunday in May every year. So in 2020, March, we had to postpone the marathon due to the pandemic. So we were just a few months out and then really at the beginning of who knows what was to come. Unfortunately, 2020, we had none of our events. We switched everything to virtual. Our mission here at P3R is to get any and all to move with us. So we didn't want to leave our runners, our movers with nothing to do through the pandemic. We all saw, now looking back, how many people got outside, started walking, started running. Gyms were closed, really parks and personal fitness, doing things on your own was really all you had at your fingertips at the time. So we went virtual through all of 2020. And then 2021 thought things were getting better, but unfortunately we had to postpone the marathon again in May. And then our Fleet Feet Liberty Mile, which is usually the last 2 weeks of July, was the first event that we were able to come back live in person. It's one of our smaller numbered races. It's a unique race. It's Friday night in downtown Pittsburgh. We shut down the streets, but that was our first in-person race. Finished out the rest of 2021, and then this past May, 2022 was our first marathon in 3 years. Did a lot of fulfillment, packing shirts and medals in poly mailers. So for some reason, if my time here at P3R comes to an end, I think I can get a job at Amazon real easily in a fulfillment center, but let's hope that doesn't come. And I'm here at P3R for a while.
I'm sure it won't. Is 22 shaping out to be sort of what you expected it to be going into the year?
Yeah, we're starting to see runners. We even saw in 2021, runners starting to come back, runners anxious, runners that have and movers that have been with us and are excited, and those that are new to the sport of running. And we're seeing a lot of new faces at our start line. So we had a couple of events already. We actually have one coming up this weekend, Saturday, August 20th. Light of Life here in Pittsburgh. We put on their Yinzer 4.12K. So the years, I would say it's what we predicted and what we're looking forward to, and just excited to have a full calendar of events back.
I mean, that's great. And things are definitely showing some signs of improvement. And I'm sure 2023 is going to be a much stronger year for everyone. The reason we are gathered here today is to discuss waste and to discuss the amazing efforts you guys have been putting in for a number of years actually now in reducing your waste footprint at P3R, even at your very large events, which I think in some ways is even more challenging than doing it for a smaller event. I mean, obviously, smaller event, fewer resources, but still to be able to do that for a large event, I think it's quite significant. And because we've spent some time on the podcast with a couple of my other guests looking at sort of the theory and the best practices around it, I thought it would be a nice complement to that to actually take a case like the Pittsburgh Marathon, such an important race, and look at how you guys actually managed to get to zero waste. And in researching this, one of the things that I discovered, to my surprise, is that this is not a new thing for you guys. I mean, you've been at zero waste for a few years. And even before that, it seems that the company has had a very early commitment to sustainability. So how exactly did that come about? It seems like you guys were focusing on sustainability when perhaps, like all of these buzzwords weren't even around.
You really nailed that one, Panos. Really, our sustainable efforts here at P3R, originated prior to me being a part of the company. I mentioned I've been a part of the company for 9 years now. It started out as an event staff, really involved, grew through the ranks to full-time assistant operations manager to where I'm at today of director of operations. But even when I came into meetings and help out years ago, marathon planning involved sustainable efforts. And it's funny, a few years ago, I believe it was probably 2018, when zero waste and sustainability really started to become the hot topic and the buzzword, as you mentioned. A few in the organization came to me and found articles or found organizations that help. And I, from the get-go, me being here, I've always kind of led our sustainable efforts, working with the organizations. And they came to me and I was like, we do this already. We have these efforts and everything in place. So as you mentioned, especially the marathon, one of our largest events, we bring 30,000 runners into downtown Pittsburgh that first weekend of May, add on over 100,000 spectators. We're one of the largest events in the city of Pittsburgh, and we wanted to do our part and be responsible of controlling the waste and what we not leave behind, but what we produce with such a large event. So it's always been a focal point for the organization, and it continues to evolve as much in this world does. It's not like we have the final answer and we have the blueprint that's never going to change. Things change over time, and we just continue to evolve. And we have a great partner that I'll talk about here that we work with for our sustainability efforts. And, we work closely with them, and whatever changes we need to make year in, year out, we will.
The Pittsburgh Marathon has been officially at zero waste, and we'll go through what that technically means in a sec, since 2015 or something?
Yes.
Yeah, which is like an awesome achievement, right? Back in 2015, there was very little talk around these topics. What actually led you to think harder about this stuff than some of your other colleagues out there? Was it like a moral thing? Was it something about where you're based, the culture of the company? Where did it all come from?
I believe it just started with the culture of the organization. We make sure that we cover all bases. I think being along the rivers, as I mentioned, plays a little bit into it, but just being as the marathon and the organization came back and grew, we didn't want to have something negative attached to our event, to our organization. As far as we bring all these people into the city, we bring all this money into the city. It's a great event for all to come run, move with us. But look at the pile of trash that's left behind. Look at the waste that this brings. It kind of pros and cons, where we focus on sustainability, focus on our efforts. And now it's another positive that we get to talk about post marathon, what our diversion rate is, what is our, percentage of waste that's not going to landfills that is getting reused or recycled or composted.
Yeah. So let's get into some of those technicalities, and let's start with waste. Our listeners are race directors. They know some of the major things that produce waste in a race. What are those biggest buckets for the Pittsburgh Marathon in terms of sources of waste?
If we talk waste, meaning what's there, when you look on the streets, what's around, it's cardboard. And looking at waste by weight, it's cardboard. Starting from the whole weekend, our packet pickup, all the shirts come in boxes. Mentioned 30,000 runners, so there's a lot of boxes of shirts. Medals come in that cardboard boxes. You have your cups and just your normal things that you can think of that come within a cardboard box. So by weight, cardboard is the most waste we produce, but luckily cardboard is something that is recyclable, so it's not going into a landfill. If we want to look at waste from what is actually unfortunately ending up in the landfill, it's the snack bags, the chip bags, stuff like that we give to our runners post race that just can't get recycled or composted. Coffee cups that people are bringing themselves sometimes aren't what we like to use, so that goes to landfill. But really, to answer the question directly, from a weight perspective, it's cardboard that's the biggest source.
And that's recyclable, because you mentioned there's different types of waste, and I guess there's better and worse waste, right? I mean, there's the stuff that you can at least recycle, like you were mentioning, like cardboard. And then there's stuff, I guess some stuff you can compost, that would be your compostable waste. There's some stuff you can recover, some stuff you can reuse, and then there's the stuff that just goes to landfill, right?
Correct.
So in terms of those three buckets, can you give people listening in a rough idea of how those different types of waste sort of break down for the Pittsburgh Marathon, between the recoverable stuff, the compostable stuff, the reusable stuff, and then what ends up going to landfill?
Yeah. Looking at just this past year's marathon in 2022, our diversion rate was 92%, and that's the high standard. We're always in that 92, 94% range. So compost, which the banana peels, are cups. We use wax cups. We don't use a polyline cup. So, the cups can, be compostable. I mentioned the banana peels. Any other food product that is just thrown into the garbage bags is compostable. And out of our, percentage of everything we produce, 23% of our waste is compostable. Then you get to your reuse, which again is food, bananas, whatever other food products. We've had fruit cups over the years, Eaton Park cookies, potato chips, different food products that get donated to the local food banks. 412 Food Rescue is an organization here in the Pittsburgh area that recovers food. So that's your reuse. Also, clothing that is discarded along the race course is reuse. It's picked up, taken to Goodwill, cleaned, and is be able to be reused. So 30% is reusable. And then recycling is 39%. And that's just your normal recycling efforts. That's one thing I've learned over the years. Some things that you would think is recyclable, but not. Aluminum's not as great as, maybe plastic, even though as funny as it sounds. It's just the way it's able to be broken down. But the bottles of water, the plastic water jugs that we use at our water stop are things that are recyclable. I mentioned the cardboard, which is our biggest thing. So I said 39%. So out of all that waste that actually ends up in the landfill is 8%.
And the total amount of waste, like for a race like the Pittsburgh Marathon with 30,000 runners, how much total waste are we talking about? Just to give people an idea of exactly what the footprint of a race like that would be.
Yeah, so the percentages I just went over right there. This past year, as far as waste, we had just over 27,000 pounds of waste from this year's race. That includes the food product. That's where those percentages came out of all that. 30% of that number was reusable, 39 was recyclable. So it's a large number coming from the event.
And it's interesting the way the number comes out, that it sort of ends up around almost like a pound of waste per runner, roughly, for this kind of race, right? 27,000 pounds of waste in total for a 30,000 runner race. So it's almost, that's a sort of like an interesting rule of thumb there for people maybe to look at. And then you mentioned the diversion rate, which then gets us into how zero waste is defined, because zero waste doesn't actually mean exactly zero waste, does it?
Correct. No, it doesn't mean that we produce zero waste, nothing on the landfill. Zero waste, by a definition standpoint, is a set of principles focused on waste prevention. All products we use, no trash, but to be sent to the landfill. So, like you mentioned, we all know it's very hard to be zero waste and not produce anything going to landfill, but it's focused on the prevention of waste. What can you do to help lower the amount of pounds that are ending up in the landfill?
I guess for the definition of waste and zero waste, we keep factoring in only the kinds of waste that is created by the race and immediately around race day and runners, right? So we're not including things like 100,000 spectators you mentioned come to the race, the waste those guys contribute. We're not considering things like we give away a few t-shirts to runners, then, they go away at home and those are waste at some point down the line. These are not factored in this calculation.
Correct. Spectator waste is very slightly factored in around our start finish line and our post race party. We'll cover the city trash receptacles. That way, trash is being thrown into the receptacles that we monitor and able to sort later. So we will pick up a little bit of that spectator waste, but along the course, whatever happens, no, it's not factored in. And as far as any swag or the t-shirts, medals that we give to the runners that they might take home and not want throw away is not factored into that equation.
You still, though, I guess, clean up after the race, even spectator waste and stuff like that, right? I mean, you go around and you collect everything there's to collect.
Yes.
So in that sense, as you were saying, part of that comes into the calculation because you count all that waste you collect as part of your total waste footprint.
Yep. If the team that we use gets their hands on it, it's part of ours. But like I was saying, out on the course, mile 5, if there are spectators watching the event and they just throw their stuff away into a trash can that the city comes around, after the race and dumps like your normal trash service, we unfortunately don't calculate that in or able to do anything with that weight right there.
So let's go through a few examples of things that produce waste during a race that people would be familiar with. You mentioned some of them. Let's start with the big ones, I guess. Apart from cardboard, which is really interesting, we'll get back to in a sec with regards to how stuff is delivered to the race. But water bottles, do you guys give out water bottles or you use cups? What do you use there for water?
So along the course at our water stops, we use the wax cups. Those are recyclable. Those are collected throughout the race and recyclable. In our finish line, we give out bottles of water to the participants as they finish. So those are also recyclable. And then some of the food products, not so much recyclable, but depending on what it is, classifies if it will go compostable or if it's just recycled.
So the water cups you mentioned there with the wax lining, are they still recyclable or compostable?
The cups are compostable.
Okay, so they have that lining, so you can't quite recycle it back to paper, you put into compost. Has it ever been the case that in the event you actually used water bottles at these stations themselves and then you switched to cups, or has it been like using cups for a number of years?
It's been cups for a number of years. It's easier for the amount of participants that we need to take care of, and also just in a way safer for the participants to, we've all seen pictures of water stops, runners grab the cups, take their drink and toss them on the ground till the lovely volunteers clean it up. It's a lot easier to run over a wax cup that just crushes at your feet than kick around a plastic water bottle that might still have some water in it that could get underneath your foot and you can slip and fall. So we've always had cups at our water stops.
And then the heat sheet blankets, right? Which I guess you guys use some of those. Do those go to landfill or you do something with those?
No, those are able to be recyclable. Those are all collected. And that's usually one of our biggest that affects our number, good or bad. If we're able to work with the volunteers and control how many they come on the rolls and we rip them off and, stick them on the bike rack fence, to be able to hand out. So if we're able to control how much is pulled pre-event, which past few years we've done a great job communicating to the volunteers, they're able to be collected as long as if they stay within our footprint. Someone takes that blanket and wanders off somewhere else in the city and throws away. Unfortunately, we missed that. But, within our finish line, within our post-race party footprint, if that's where they dispose of it, that's able to be recycled and taken to a location that, they've made benches out of them before and other kind of interesting products from recycled heat sheets.
And is your responsibility to basically collect all of those discarded heat sheets and then put them all in a big bag and send them over to the recycling plant? Or do you work with someone who comes and picks them up?
We work with someone who, PRC, that I know we're going to get to here in a second, the organization that we use, to kind of handle our sustainability efforts. They collect them as they're going about doing all their other things and separates them and puts them into a large bag to take to where they need to be.
I hope you're so far enjoying our chat on waste reduction and getting some good pointers out of it. One really crucial thing to remember with any new initiative you undertake, whether it's on sustainability or anything else, is to make sure to communicate information to participants about what you're doing and how it might affect them and their enjoyment of your race. And that's where the importance of a good email communication system comes in. Now, I've talked before about run signups, built-in tools, and how they integrate with your registration data, which is actually really important, and how they're also free to use. And their fully revamped email marketing platform is no exception. So you can use the Run Sign Up native emailing tool to send out all the emails you need to send to your participants for free, however large your participant list. And yes, you get some really nice email templates you can use that are personalized with your participant data, or you can build your own if that's what you want to do. Really, you can do pretty much most things you're already doing on your MailChimp or Constant Contact account. The difference when you choose to do it on Run Sign Up is you keep all your data in one place and it costs you absolutely nothing. So you can take the money you save by not paying for a separate emailing service and put it towards something else in your race marketing to help grow your event further. So if you're already a Run Sign Up customer, do your email marketing from your race dashboard and be done with it. And if you're not, just go to runsignup.com. That's runsignup.com. And check out what a native email marketing tool can do when it works side by side with all your race registration data. Okay, now let's get back to the episode. In terms of cardboard, which you mentioned is one of the highest sources, or one of the largest sources of waste you guys have. I mean, I'm sure you've had discussions with your vendors to reduce that. Do you think there's any solution around that in terms of taking delivery of swag maybe some other way? Or is that sort of like an unavoidable part of your waste or something that you can't really do too much around?
Unfortunately, there's not much you can do around it, Panos. Just the way some companies, ship things. That shirts are always going to come in cardboard boxes. The medals always come in cardboard boxes. I think sometimes even that cardboard is tested with the weight of those metal boxes. One thing that we try to do, and we were very fortunate this year, as I talked about the bottled water, we've had different sponsors of bottled water in the past, and some have shipped bottles in cardboard boxes. And it's unfortunate because it's more cardboard that we have. But this past year, we were able to get, bottled water that comes, plastic wrapped. So you just have to cut the plastic wrapping off of it, and you have that for all the cases that we have instead of the cardboard. So trying to get those type of products out of cardboard is definitely something we can work on. But unfortunately, there's some things that just can't do.
We'll get into that actually in a sec. I guess when you get to 92 or 94, you've been in the past percent diversion rate. Squeezing more juice out of that lemon gets a little bit harder, right? I mean, at some point, there's only so many things you can improve without compromising on race experience. And we'll go through a couple of examples there because, at the end of the day, you have to keep a balance, right? You can't be too rigid about some of these things. You mentioned, which is actually the first time I hear of it, and it's really great, that some of the clothes that people discard on the start line, which I've seen in marathons quite a lot, you put those to good use, you donate them, you try to recover as much you can from that. What about leftover medals and t-shirts you may have from no shows or no finishers, or I'm sure you guys maybe buy an extra X% of that. What do you do with that?
That's one thing, over the years that our team here has worked closely on. As many in the industry know, the shirt and medal order has to be placed months in advance, for the quantity that we need to get. So you're really, really forecasting how many runners you think you're going to have race weekend. And if you're down some, you're going to have a lot more leftover shirts or, like you said, the no show. So now those shirts aren't added into our equation. And that's something that, as we were prepping for this podcast, I thought of, Panos, of working with our partner. Is there a way that it might not get into our final report of the marathon, but it's something that we can report on later? We work with an organization here in the Pittsburgh area called World Vision that we take all of our leftover race shirts throughout the year of all the events that we do, and we donate them to them. And then they go to third world countries. They go to other areas that have a need for clothing.
Yeah, which is great. And then the medals, you just scrap them, I guess?
Yeah. You look at the medals. I've taken it there one there, and they call it, the type of metal is called pot metal. We just take it to the local scrapyard, and they're able to melt it down and reuse that.
There's a few actually interesting initiatives around medals as well. I've seen there's a couple of charities. I want to cover a few of them in the podcast where you can also donate those. I'm sure you may be familiar with some of them that they go around giving them to children's hospitals and other places, a sort of reward for people. So there's other things you can do there. You mentioned, and I think it's high time we get into this, PRC, a very important organization that has helped along the way getting you guys to zero waste? So you had the vision, you had the desire, and then PRC comes in. Can you tell us a little bit about how they work and how they've helped you guys get to your goal of zero waste?
Absolutely. And I can't say enough good things about PRC and our involvement with them from everything they do, but also as I get into this, everything that they, in a way, take off our plate race weekend and allow our team to focus on other areas. So PRC, Pennsylvania Resource Council, is their official name, and they're right here in the Pittsburgh area. They are the oldest grassroots environmental organization here in the state, and their mission is really environmental education, recycling, waste diversion. They have programs, they have anti-litter campaigns, and they do a lot more, but they really work in the Pittsburgh area with events like ourselves, other events that go on to help their diversion rate. But they also do other things like, you hear of the hard to recycle events, household products that you have in your house, old paint cans, electronics that aren't good to go to the landfill. They put on those events as well. But here at P3R, we've been working with PRC since 2012. P3R brought the marathon back in 2009. So around for 3 years as they grew it and got the event together and got to where it is, so that they can look towards sustainability efforts. 2012 was the first time that we approached PRC to help us with this, and we've worked very closely with them, every year since.
And in terms of their structure, are they a non-profit organization, a for-profit organization? Do they come under, I guess, the city of Pittsburgh?
They do not fall under the city of Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh has their own environmental services, their own trash trucks, their own recycling program. PRC is their own organization. We do pay for their services, but they are a nonprofit that is, like I said, promote individual and organizations to lower their waste footprint.
And in terms of those services, what exactly did they offer you guys on race day? So exactly what kinds of weight do they take off your shoulders on race day?
On race day, there are boots on the ground. They are the ones that are going around. They'll have a team. I think this past year they had 38 individuals as part of their sustainability crew, and they are the ones that are setting up the clear streams, as we call them. They're not garbage boxes, but they're metal frames that we put the trash bags, the recycle, the compostable bags in. They will monitor heavy areas. As you approach and you have, some food in your hands and you're not sure what bin to throw it in, they help put it in there. They also walk up and, sort on site. If they see a plastic water bottle in a trash, they'll move it over to the appropriate container. They're cleaning up the cardboard as we're unpacking the metals on race morning. They're in our post-race party doing exactly the same thing, in our hospitality tents, helping with that cleanup efforts as well. But our coordination with them starts way before the marathon and even goes past marathon. Whenever we are all said and done on that Sunday, everyone gets to go home and get some much needed sleep. But then PRC's right back out the next morning, and everything that they've collected, everything that's collected out on the race course at the fluid stations, like we mentioned, the cups and the cardboard and the plastic water jugs, they're taken to a site where they're dumped, and PRC then will sort out the recyclables, the compostables, the waste, do that sort, do that cleanup, and then waste will be hauled away. Recycling they'll handle, and then the compost heads up north to a farm where it's used up there. So they have their sort. Usually takes 2 days after the marathon to sort through all the cups and water bottles and cardboard. But yeah, it's a big effort, and like I said, 38 individuals come and work. So that's 38 less people that we at P3R would have to. And it'd probably even be more, because these individuals do this, for all kind of events in the city. So they're professionals. They'd be more efficient than we would be if we were doing this. So it definitely allows our team to focus on the runners, on the safety, on the overall experience of the day, and not really have to worry about waste piling up at one spot.
That's really important point about the professionals there, because a lot of these things, as you said, you could probably put headcount to, you probably need more people. One of the things that really surprised me, something that Bruce Rayner, another guest I had, who is a consultant for sustainability that raised with me at some point, is that you definitely don't want to leave participants and sort of lay people, so to speak, throw stuff where they think needs to be thrown. They will contaminate waste. They will contaminate different categories of recycling stuff. I mean, all well-intentioned, obviously, right? But these people, they know, like the professionals, the PRC staff, whoever you get to help with this, they're so much better at knowing from experience how to do this, where to put things, how to, at what stage it makes sense to take it off the hand of someone and you then take over putting it into the final bin, all of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people indirectly, with good intentions, think, oh, I have this plastic water bottle or this wax cup that they probably don't know is a wax cup. And, they see a bin that says recyclable and they're like, well, I know this isn't trash. I'm going to throw it in this recyclable container, which again, like with great intentions, but really it can go over to the one to the left of it that's compostable. So to have those individuals working long hours, really standing at collection sites, I've seen them take it off your hands and, sort them, okay, this right here was waste. This is recyclable. And this right here is compostable. Different areas of the country, it's these numbered plastics are recyclable, but these ones have to unfortunately get thrown away, or glass, for instance. And unless you're someone that's really up on it, you might think you're doing the right thing or putting it where it belongs, but unfortunately it's not. And, like you said, you mentioned contaminated, a whole bag could have to go to waste just because, something that got in there shouldn't be, and, can't go to where it's supposed to go. But that's another great thing that PRC does is they will sort and they'll go through and pick out, as much as they can. Some things get missed, but as much as they can, they'll sort and pick out to make sure things are where they belong.
And I wonder, is employing them something that is an obligation for events of your size, or is it something that is optional and whichever event wants puts themselves forward and they go hire them?
Within the city of Pittsburgh, we have to fill out permits for the event. The special events permits, really anybody within the city has to fill out if you're having a marathon, if you're having a block party. And part of the permit process, they ask, what are your recycling efforts? And you can go through the city. And if it's just, your normal block party that you need some recycling containers for that, you can. But, PRC is well known and respected within the city. So when I put on that permit that we are using PRC, it's great and, applauded to see. But, I've mentioned before, there is a cost to them, and there are some events that might not want to spend that cost and, try and do it themselves. So I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but it definitely is something that we at P3R want to do and make sure we do it for our events.
Yeah. And I can't even think why trying to do it yourself would be any kind of reasonable economy. I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing you want to just hand over to someone else, right? I mean, there's so many things you need to worry on race day. There's particularly these days, I'm talking to race directors all the time with all the resourcing issues and volunteer and staffing problems there are. If you're really set on being sustainable and working on this, if such an organization exists, which is an interesting point because maybe other states don't have a PRC or, maybe they don't offer these kinds of services, but if they do, it sounds like good sense to employ someone like that.
Absolutely. If you have an organization like this in your area, you put on, a marathon. I'm lucky enough to go to other marathons in the country to work, and I see their efforts, and a lot of people do things the right way. But even before, if we go pre-pandemic, when volunteers and staffing wasn't as crucial and as dire as it is, in these days. Yes, if you sit there and, look at the invoice that we get at the end, it's a big number, that we pay them for their service. But to find the 38, 40 individuals to do this, or if you think, oh, our team can handle it, we all know the last thing we want to do when that final runner crosses the finish line and we clean up the finish line, we clean up the post-race party. The final thing we want to do is walk around and dead tired, not sleeping all weekend, is walk around and collect waste and recyclable, and then spend, like I mentioned, the days after as we're trying to clean up and get all of our equipment, back in our warehouse and organized, getting ready for our next event, spend there sorting through this trash and putting things. So the price we pay is well worth it. And also to sit there and look at, okay, if we hire individuals and we do this all of ourselves, we would be spending a lot more than what we are with PRC.
And in terms of the work you guys do before race day to help ease some of the burden or like, to think a little bit harder around your supply chain and your orders and try and sort of minimize that or optimize that as much as you can. Is that also something that PRC advises on, or is it on you and your team to basically, think harder through, where we get stuff, how we get stuff, how much food we order, all of that stuff?
It's a collective effort, Panos. I talked about what PRC does race day and the day after, but, we start talking to them a few months prior to the marathon. I've had a great time working with them. There's been a few individuals I've worked with over the years, but it's lucky that when someone leaves, the second in command has kind of taken over. So they've seen our event before. They might not have seen it from this full scale because they weren't in that position, but they're familiar with our event. And it's always eye-opening, that first marathon that they go through. We have a few meetings with them a few months prior to the event. We recap. They do a great job of giving me a post-race report. So we review that from the previous year. And, in there, they let me know that we've had, this year we had a lot of leftover bananas, or we had a lot of extra product here, and that helps. And I do see that as well, but, they're right there. They're the ones handling it. So it helps me when I'm putting in that order, looking at what our registration numbers are, what they were last year, what I ordered, and if I could reduce that any. And then we just, we talk through the event. Is there anything new this year that we didn't have last year that, should be an area that we, focus on? Do we add a hospitality tent to our post-race party to put that on their map of, hey, we got to make sure we're getting in this tent as well? Or one great thing I mentioned, the water's not coming in cardboard this year. So that's less of a concern, and they don't have to put as many people in that area on race day. So really just, talking through what's new, what's different this year. And then they also, with our vendors, with our sponsors, they give us guidelines. When we have some of our caterers that come in, we have PRC provides us with guidelines, in helping them find compostable utensils and compostable serving equipment that we ask all of our vendors to use when they come on site. That way it helps with our sustainable efforts. So they do give us, that guidance to pass along to our vendors, as well as, some things that we put out on our social media channels to our spectators and our runners as well.
What kind of information do you actually share with your spectators to help them be part of what you guys are doing around sustainability?
Really just a broad overview of what we're doing and let them, make them aware that we have. It always makes me laugh. You go to some events and the trash cans are covered, because of their efforts, but people still set their coffee cup or something right on top of that bag, even though if you look right to the left, there's where it should go. So just making them aware of what we're doing and our efforts. And I think sometimes too, if you're a first time marathoner and your family's coming, you talk to the race directors, parents, you've seen it. You talk about the clothes at the start line along the course. You see the cups at fluid stations, and it looks like there's just cups all over the road. Well, yes, at that moment, as the runners are coming through, they are there, but they get cleaned up and they get discarded responsibly. So just, educating them again, we have something in place. All those cups aren't left there. They don't go blowing away into the sides of the roads or into the weeds. They're collected, and, here's where they end up.
Did you know that in a recent survey, 73% of responders said that reading reviews influences which races they enter? Well, RaceCheck is the largest aggregator of race reviews in the world and has collected over 40,000 reviews for over 6,000 events globally. So, how can you collect more reviews for your event and make the most of them to increase your race registrations? Well, you can start by listening to our Power of Race Reviews podcast from September 20th last year. Plenty of tips there on growing your race reviews. And then visit organizers.racecheck.com. That's organizers with an S.racecheck.com to download your free RaceCheck review box so you can start showing all your race reviews on your website for an instant boost to your race's social proof and conversions. It really is a no-brainer, so go to organizers.racecheck.com, That's organizers with an S, .racecheck.com and download your free RaceCheck review box today. Okay, let's get back to the episode. So in all this, we need to be practical about this, as we mentioned earlier, right? I mean, there's a million things you can be doing. There's capless racing in trail running, but different story taking that into a 30,000 person event. How do you manage that side of things? So basically being reasonable with still delivering a great event and a great race experience and the kinds of stuff that people want, because they want a medal and a shirt and they want stuff, I guess. So how do you balance that, people wanting stuff, and you guys trying to create as little waste as possible?
It's a lovely balance there, Panos. I think one of the big things, we do post-race surveys to our runners and our movers, and that really sheds light on what they, as a participant, as a client of ours, what they want. And we take that and we, really listen to them. But as you said, then there's that balance. It's a balance of giving the runner what they want, or offering them something that will make them want to sign up to run the event. But at the same time, being responsible on our side to not just create excess waste. So one thing that we've looked at over the years, at a lot of races, you get the goodie bags. Sponsors send items for us. Sponsor would send 30,000 items of something that maybe half, maybe a quarter of the people would like. The other half quarter would look at it and dispose of it right away. So one thing that back in 2018 was the first year we thought about it. We started thinking about a premium item, a premium gift. So instead of asking our sponsors, our partners to send, like I said, 30,000 items, we then a pair of sunglasses, pint glasses, something that we would think the majority of the runners would like. And it's something that, a pint glass, take it home, you put it in your cabinet, and something that you're using often or on an occasion. And it's not a piece of plastic that might get used one time or give to your kids or somebody, and it's used once and done. So we've really started looking at that premium gift to our runners to really help cut down on excess waste from giving out the swag that everybody sometimes wants. You mentioned the cupless, and everybody, all race directors, all organizations across the country, they all have their own thoughts. They all have their own best interests in mind, and it's one that you saw it a lot leading into the pandemic, even coming out of the pandemic, not just from a zero waste side of things, but also a safety, a health standpoint as we're dealing with the pandemic. And it's something that we look at. We're always evaluating on our events, but sometimes trail races are smaller numbers, to our 30,000, to other marathons that are even larger than us, Boston, New York, Chicago. And sometimes trail running, the athletes are a lot more spread out, and they're not in the packs that they are during marathons or during 5Ks as they approach a water stop. So keeping the runners' experience in mind, not just from a swag standpoint, but an actual competing standpoint. Could you go cupless? There's you could look at things that do, water monsters, multiple spigots, having runners bring their own cups. Yes. And I think that's possible if your number of athletes are down. Maybe I would say under 10,000, definitely even smaller. You'd be able to do something like that, because then you're getting backlogs at water stops, and people just aren't getting the experience. And then also from a safety standpoint, from medical, depending on the distance you're running, if we're talking marathon, and someone really cares about their time, and they come up to a water stop that just crowded with people, and they said, "Oh, I'm not waiting for this. I'm going to keep going." There could be, some medical issues that come about from that. So it's definitely a balance, something that we're always looking at. One thing, we had it in the works for 2020, but we had our first ever Earth Day run, just a 5K, but that was something we went cupless. We had a water stop out on the course, and we informed our runners to bring their own cups to fill up for fluids if they need it. So, like I said, there's areas that we can attack this and do something. I've looked at our events as far as the number of water stops that are along the course, seeing if we need as many as we do. That way, we might not be cupless, but if we're able to eliminate a fluid stop or two, and we talk 30,000 runners, just doing simple math, if we eliminate two, there's 60,000 cups that are not out there anymore. It's definitely a balance and something that we're always looking at.
Absolutely. And actually, I think that's a very interesting point, that people keep focusing. I know I was in thinking about this, about how do we take cups and bottles out of water stations. If you can't do that, which I agree is difficult to do for a road race, people are running for time. I mean, expecting them to carry even like a collapsible silicon something, it's even in those cases, it may be a little bit too much to ask of them. But you can think harder about, which I see lots actually in US races mostly, do I need a water station every 2 kilometers or something, right? I mean, maybe you don't, maybe people can get by with 2/3 of the water stations, and then you eliminate just a full station full of all of that stuff.
Exactly.
So if you feel comfortable sharing that kind of information, I think it would just be interesting for people listening in to talk a little bit about the cost of all of this for you. I know you mentioned that there's a bill waiting for you guys at the office at the end of the event from PRC, and you said it's a sort of eye-watering number. What kind of ballpark are we talking about for something like that, for a race of that kind of size?
Yeah, so for the marathon, 30,000, we have events on Saturday and Sunday, so it's really 2 days of activity. Plus, like I said, the marathon usually takes 2 days after to do the sort. So we're usually looking in the $15,000, $15,000 to $20,000 range for PRC. The big chunk of it is the hourly rate that we're paying them and the employees, but it's also their coordination. We take on the cost of the compostable dumpsters, the different dumpsters that they secure for us, to put the compostables in, to put the waste and recycling in, and it's for some of the other. We coordinate if we're buying the trash bags or recycle bags if they are. So it is definitely a large number, to say the least, but it's something that's definitely worth it. We've looked at it. I think we looked at it in, if this was something that we would take on ourselves and employ the people and do all this work, that'd probably be something that's well in the six figures for us to kind of handle internally.
Yeah, because I mean, these guys have made the capital investments. They have all the equipment. They reuse it. For you guys to do it, unless you lease it out, it just would be a no-brainer. That's why people hire timers and all kinds of stuff. And to be honest, $15,000, I mean, on an absolute basis, yes, it's a 5-figure. It's an amount, right? I mean, it's definitely something to think about, but it still boils down to 50 cents per runner, roughly, for your 30,000 participants, which I think, for all of this stuff, to be able to help you guys to be zero waste, which again means that only 8% of your waste goes to landfill, it's well worth it. I know it won't scale up and down for a 1,000-person event, or even less so maybe for a 200-person event, but I think it's a very good investment to pay 50 cents per runner and have all of that taken care of for you.
No, absolutely. Like I said, it's if you hand the bill to somebody that's you're not very familiar with what PRC does for us, it's, like you said, it's a 5-figure number. It's a large number. We all know in the industry that police costs are, a larger bill, than that. But, like you said, you break it down to the number of runners that you have, 50 cents, and the things that it takes off my plate as a director of operations, takes off the plate of those in the event. Then the experience that our runners get, it's definitely a well worth investment.
And are you able to offset any of that, or receive any financial support or any grants to basically offset some of those costs?
There's grants out there. We all know there's grants for everything if you're out there looking for them. So I implore all to look at that to potentially help offset the cost. But us as an organization, we don't go after grants specifically for our sustainable efforts. We kind of go at it a different approach. We look at a sponsor for our sustainability efforts, and we have a sponsor, a partner that kind of helps offset that cost for us.
So that's a super interesting concept. Again, I heard that first in the podcast I did with Bruce Rayner, the sustainability sponsor or partner. And it's something that more and more races get to. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how this relationship works and basically what the role of a sustainability partner would be for a race like that?
Absolutely. I think every organization, every event can kind of have a different role for them. And I think each partner that you find could have their own idea or intent. One thing that we do in our partnership sponsorship team does a great job at securing these partners. We really want to target a company or an organization that has sustainability in their mission statement or has sustainability in their pillars. It's not just, hey, let's think of a company out there that can give us some money and we can just say, hey, X is the partner, is the sponsor of our sustainable efforts. We want the partnership and our sustainability efforts to come together and make sense. We want to use an organization, a company that has the same thoughts of sustainability that we do at P3R. Like I said, it's in their mission or it's in one of their pillars. One of our sponsor now is Evoqua. It's a water technology company here, and they're transforming water, enriching life. So their efforts are to help clean water, help make sure things aren't getting into. We have our three rivers here, but they have sustainability in their pillar. So that sponsorship, it helps offset the cost. Not really involved as far as doing the work, but they're supporting what we're doing with PRC.
And basically, yeah, they don't do the work, but what they do is they provide a sponsorship which is sort of earmarked for the sustainability program, right? So you're getting the resources from them to then go on and work on your sustainability with that money that comes from that specific sponsor.
Exactly.
And then from their point of view, you mentioned that these are companies that share your approach to sustainability and vision, but that should also help them increase their profile within the community through being the sustainability sponsor for the event.
Correct. Like I mentioned, Evoqua, transferring water, enriching life, something that they talk about, and then they can turn around and say, we have partnered with P3R and the Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon on their sustainability efforts. We're supporting an organization that cares just like we do about the environment, about water quality. So we're going to help them be able to continue with their sustainability efforts at their events. So that's how it really kind of comes together, and we support one another.
And that first sustainability sponsor you had at Pittsburgh Marathon, was that before your time? I'm just wondering, how did that relationship get started? Is it a company comes to you and they say, we want to help you out with sustainability, or do you go and find someone who's a good match?
That's outside of my area, but just the knowledge that I have of it, just like a lot of partnerships, it sometimes something just falls right into your lap. A company organization reaches out to you with an offer, and sometimes our team does the research themselves, and it might be, I know somebody, that worked for this. Do the research. Look at what their mission statement is. Look at what they do already. This seems like it'd be a great fit. Let us reach out to them. So not sure of how Evoqua came about, who initiated the conversation, if it was us or them. It's not the area that I focus on, but it's been a great partnership with them. So, it's great having them on board.
And I think it's a great model for people listening in. It's a great model to expand your roster of sponsorships outside your typical endemic sponsors, the people who are interested in the running side or in the sports side of things. And it's great to open up the event. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to offer someone to be able to be a sustainability sponsor or partner for a race. There's so much good that can be attached to being that kind of sponsor, and any race can do it. And they can be approaching really any kind of corporate. I know you guys focus a little bit more on finding even a better fit for that, but there's so many corporates and companies out there in your communities that would be interested in taking on that role. And that takes off the table a big objection or a big hurdle for lots of race directors, which is the cost for people outside companies like yours. Spending that amount of money, particularly at tough times like this, is a luxury. Let's face it. It's not something that people would do automatically.
No, absolutely. Going to conferences and talking to others, that are smaller organization than what we are here at P3R. Everybody, if you would poll, race directors and organizations, Do you want to do sustainability? I think it'd be overwhelming, unanimously, yes. But I think sometimes that what people, some of the small organizations run into is the cost that goes along with some of these efforts. And they want to do it, but they don't have the money to be able to do it. Unfortunately, right now with inflation, in the world that we are, everything is going up. And, you have to sit there and we've talked about, what is priority, the safety of the runners, everything else. And sometimes sustainability gets dropped down. And to be able to go out and find a partner and open up, like Evoqua, like I said, it's a water technology. At first, you would think, what would they ever want to do with a running event, endurance event? Why would they, sponsor it? But when you make that connection of they have sustainability efforts, they have it, something that they focus on. We have that too. It just, it's a great marriage of two organizations that have a same common goal in mind. And, now they're a sustainability partner of the Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon and P3R. And, that helps us be able to further continue our sustainability efforts.
And there's lots of local businesses, even sort of at a really local level, who have sustainability efforts that they would love to team up with events on that. You have retailers, supermarkets, all kinds of people that are thinking harder about their own sustainability program. And that kind of sponsorship in a local community can bring lots of benefits to them. So I would highly encourage people to think around that and potentially see if they could potentially bring a sustainability sponsor on board. As we wrap up, what does the future look like in terms of your sustainability program and your waste reduction efforts at P3R? As we mentioned earlier, 92, 94%, it's pushing it a little bit. Where's the next percentage point coming from?
Like I've mentioned throughout, always evaluating, always looking at our post-race reports that I say that PRC gives us. So getting better at our food product that's left over. It's one thing you never want to happen is to run out of food for the athletes, for the runners. And sometimes you have to make those orders well in advance, because you're asking for such a high quantity. But, registration's usually around the same amount, give or take a few thousand. So, over the years, look at, okay, what have we ordered? What is getting used? Talking with, who we're getting stuff from. Okay, if I place this initial order now, what is my drop dead date to maybe increase this? Looking at registration to date, we're looking a little lower. We're looking, right on pace. I'm going to drop my order by 10,000, but if something happens and where we start to pick up pace, can I do a second order, in time to be able to have what I need? But then just looking at the event as a whole from a runner experience, one thing that you see at all races is signage, sponsor signage, directional signage, informational signage. A lot of time that's on Coroplast signs. We're looking here. I know there's a few organizations that have done it. LED boards, at our finish line. So instead of having these Coroplast signs that, sometimes get reused, sometimes get marked up, a sponsor comes, goes, change their logo, and we have to change out that sign. Now it's LED boards that those signs aren't going to waste. So it's just always looking at, I think that's one of our major things that we're going to be looking at going forward here at P3R, but, always keeping our eyes open, always leaning on PRC, their advice of how we can improve and do better.
Yeah. And of course, it's a fast-paced world we live in. New things come on the market all the time, new products, new technologies. In a few years from now, there might be ways of cutting back even further on the residual waste you guys have. I think that has been really helpful for getting sort of like a ground level grasp of how some of these things apply in a real race. So thank you very much for that. If people want to maybe reach out, take an interest in some of these things and perhaps follow up with you, can they do that? And how do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, Panos, I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure getting to spend this time with you talking about what we do here at P3R, sustainability efforts. But if people want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, Brian, Brian Schmidt, Schmidt. You can find me there, and you know what, you can, if you want to, and you really want to know more about it and how we can help, feel free to send me an email. So my email is my name, brian.schmidt at p3r.com. p3r.org. So brian.schmidt@p3r.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again for the time you gave up to share some of these thoughts with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Panos. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much to everyone listening in, and we will see you all on our next podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode on Getting to Zero Waste with P3R Director of Operations, Brian Schmidt. You can find more resources on anything and everything related to race directing on our website, racedirectorshq.com. You can also share your questions about waste diversion, sustainable event practices, or anything else in our Facebook group, Race Directors Hub. Many thanks again to our awesome podcast sponsors, Run Sign Up and RaceCheck, for sponsoring today's episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite player and check out our podcast back catalog for more great content like this. Until our next episode, take care and keep putting on amazing races.